for me, it was just all about Sean Dyche that on Saturday. And I think he deserves such a huge amount of credit for the way in which he's come into the football club. And I think last week we sort of played down the importance of, press conferences and what they say, because every manager comes out in the first press conference and always sounds very good and everyone gets on board straight away before any actual football has been played. But that's not to do him down, and the things he said and the way he said it. And it's something that some people would, some of the tactics he uses and approaches he uses, people
Yeah.
describe as old school, etc., etc. But I just think he's really struck a great tone. And some of the things he's been saying to the players about the feedback and being honest, and
Mhm.
that survey. The stuff about them feeling as if they've let the previous manager down. The stuff he said about if we're going to get transfers in, I want them to be better than the players we've got here. What does that say about you guys? It just feels like every step he's made, every small step in regards to what he said, has been absolutely spot on. And of course, on Saturday, the way in which he set the team up and the way in which he managed to get the players feeding off that atmosphere was fantastic as well. So I just think he deserves enormous credit for walking into what was a bit of a hurricane really going on at Goodison
Yeah.
Park and coming through it, and somehow managing a team, well, getting those group of players who've been so low and so poor in recent weeks to beat a team that going into the weekend have played 19, won 16, drawn 2.
Yeah, and I think everything you said there is absolutely spot on. I think the thing that I'd sort of say first about how he's the approach that you've referred to there, I think the immediate thing that struck me was when he had his first club interview, and obviously there's a lot of wind around that in regards to what the club want to say via him, because it's something that's more positive than everything else that we banged on about since he came in under Frank Lampard and the way in which he ended up getting sacked and whatnot. When he first spoke about we've got some good players here, I thought that this was stuff that was put in by the club itself to say, oh yeah, Sean, you need to start and try and quieten these people who've got an issue with the club and the way it's run and whatnot by saying that, oh, you know what, it isn't as bad as it looks. That was the focus I very much thought the club would approach him to say. And then after that, I thought it almost was blatantly obvious to me, and I've been 100% wrong about this when he started saying that, oh, we've got some good players here. If we can strengthen, we will. But we were quickly shown that that was actually his idea and his theory in itself. It's nobody else that's gone up to him and told him. And more to the point, I don't think he's that type of manager who would simply do that, regardless of it being a job, regardless of him being the manager. It's very much what he says goes, and I like that. I like and I don't want to do him a disservice here by saying it this way, but I think the simplicity and the no nonsense approach that he's got in many things, which is obviously not to do him a disservice. And I think that when you see him and the way in which he does his job, it's quite a unique way things are done these days in the game. I mean, you go back to the managers of old, in the years gone by, where there is a simplistic approach to it, and how you get players up for it. I think there's a lot more to Sean Dyche than what a lot of people have said and stereotyped him. I think we've very much seen that since he's been here, and people banging on, he's done the bleep test and all that, and he's got players throwing up because he wants them running around all over the place. I'm not sure that that's simply him, and I think it's unfortunate to think that his way. And what you've said there, I think is much more refreshing in that he deserves a hell of a lot of credit since he's came in. Look what he's picked up as well, and the terms I've used there, you've seen why they're so much more important and innovative, despite the fact they are quite straightforward in how we approach that match against Arsenal. Because it wasn't blood and thunder. It wasn't let's just play a long ball up to Calvert-Lewin and hope he flicks it on to one of our players. Because if you look where there was a bit of criticism, and I watched this on Match of the Day, where it was played long term at times, but the players weren't in around him where they necessarily have to be if you're playing Route 1, i.e. he flicks it on and there's a Wobie there, or there's a McNeil there. That wasn't the first approach that Dice has got them to play. I thought that was quite obvious, because otherwise there would be players in and around them. We'd constantly be playing Route 1. The fact that he was short and a little bit more compact and the ball was able to go back to them and then we build an attack, that was something I didn't expect to see. And that's because, well, firstly, I didn't watch Burnley that much, but the approach to Burnley was as pragmatic as it could get, given the amount of players that he had, given what he was allowed to spend. That's been the criticism of Dyche, and me included in that. From what we saw on Saturday, this is completely different, and it really, I wouldn't go as far as saying it excited me, but
Mm.
it gave me a hell of a lot more positivity about how we can go on and get out of this mess. And then, I don't want to go too far. I don't think anybody should be going too far about what happens in the derby, and we comfortably stay up and finish mid-table, and then go into the summer trying to sign all sorts of players under him, and then we're fighting for a Europa League place. I'm not going to go as far as that, but there was a lot that we saw that I think is it's a lot more confidence that we've all got in what this team can go and do. And exciting's the wrong word, but I don't know.
It's
Content.
promising, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
promising.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Content is a little bit more how I feel, because you go back to the West Ham game with Lampard, and it become quite obvious quite quickly. Well, quickly for some, not as long for others. I sort of stuck with him a long time. But Mike Greenall, we get on very often, is absolutely brilliant at what he does, and he said it was quite early, pre-Bournemouth, the ridiculous couple of defeats we had just before the World Cup, where he was saying, no, this fella's not going to be for us, and he deserves immense credit for that himself, because he was one of the few who said that so early. But you look at the condition the team was in, the way in which we played. I hate to say it, but you look back on him and think this fella didn't really have that much of a clue what he was doing. We put someone like Paul Clement behind him. The alarm was ringing hell of a lot earlier than many of us thought. So ultimately, now we're in a position where we've got something to fight on. We've got somebody at the helm who's going to direct us somewhere. What that remains to be seen, is something that isn't necessarily going to be really, really positive. And like I said, when we're not going to go and rip the world apart in the way in which he plays, in the way in which we are, because lest we forget, most of these players we've flagged off a lot, and rightly
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm not going to turn around and say, "Oh, he was great, he was great." I think it's a time where we give credit where it's due, and that's very much, I think, what Dyche would say himself.
Yeah. Well, he did, didn't he? In his interview after the game. But and like obviously all of this and all we're talking about comes with the caveat that this is very early.
Yeah, it's one
But
game. Yeah,
you say about Lampard there as well, and you're talking about Sean Dyche there, and trying to figure like the difference between the two. Lampard, it became a bit of a catchphrase, didn't it, in the end, that everybody liked the fella, but realised
yeah,
he wasn't good. But
yeah,
Dyche, Dyche feels like a better fit, doesn't he? Because all the things you just said about him in regards to him being old school, but maybe not as old school as people think, about him being gritty, about him being, his team's playing aggressively. They're things. Everton as us as a football club are a bit old school, aren't we? We play at one of the oldest grounds going, and we've got a fan base that's
yeah,
likes the traditional values. We like to see. You think about all Everton's greatest teams and greatest players, and they are centre forwards who get on the end of crosses into the box and score headers. They are midfielders. You think like players like Peter Reid and stuff like that who get stuck in and can play a little bit as well. And listen, obviously we're nowhere near that yet, but I think I don't think we should shy away from what we like as a fan base. And I think what we saw on Saturday was pretty close to that, in a
no, you're
sense that
right.
when a team comes to Goodison Park, they should be they should be getting kicked everywhere, really, shouldn't they? They shouldn't be coming to Goodison, and we're never ever going to be a football club that's going to turn up and play teams off the park with beautiful passing football, it's like this. I sound like Brighton are doing these days as well. That's just not us. It's never been Everton, and it never will be Everton. You can
Yeah,
have a happy mixture of the two, and I think this is a bit more, I think, of what we like. But going back to what you said there, Dave, about the knocking it long to Carvalho and stuff like that. I don't mind that at all. I think that's the best Dom's played for a long time on
yeah,
Saturday, because he was involved in the game. And listen, a lot of the times the ball was knocked forward to him, and he was probably 33% favourite to win it most of the times, because Saliba and Gabriel are both good centre backs, and he was fighting with both of them all the time. But
mm-hmm.
he won it more often than he should, and he won more headers than he should have done. And he brought people into the game, and it was like I think Jack said it on our post match show. It was like the Calvert-Lewin we saw under Marco Silva, where he wasn't scoring goals, but he was affecting every single game in a positive way by the way in which he bring others into the game and you know, pin centre backs down. And if you've got a player who's got all those attributes and is good at those things, then why not use it?